The world's largest pension fund just doubled down on Bitcoin, and they did it in a way where nobody saw coming. They've been stacking very quietly over the past year, and it just revealed what all of these sovereign wealth funds in the entire world are going to have to do. Now, is this going to start a FOMO of some of the largest funds in the world and start the Bitcoin treasury rush that we have all been waiting for? We're going to get into all of this and more, but first, let's dive in to the latest news from Norway's sovereign wealth fund, how they had boosted their exposure by nearly 200% in a single year. Yes, that's right. I didn't stutter. Nearly 200% in a single year. I mean, look at this. They've absolutely exploded their year-over-year growth, growing by nearly 4,714 Bitcoin. Now, with all of this, what does this mean? And why are they growing their exposure at such an incredible rate? And is it all Bitcoin, or is it something to do with Michael Saylor and MSTR? We're going to dive into more of that here in a second, but let's look at their indirect exposure to Bitcoin, because it's not like they're buying, Bitcoin and having it in cold storage. No, no, no. These sovereign wealth funds are adding to their indirect exposure, right? So they had 355 million worth of indirect exposure to Bitcoin, that it grew over a year of 153%. The wealth fund also has investments in Bitcoin related companies like MicroStrategy and Coinbase. So at the end of its year, it held about 3,821 Bitcoin, reflecting a 153% increase in that fund. So look, this great chart that we see floating around Twitter here these days. But it remains stakes in a number of crypto-related publicly companies. It holds nearly 1% of MicroStrategy, nearly 1.1% of Tesla, and has investments in Coinbase, Metaplanet, which is another Bitcoin or MSTR copycat, and all of this. So it invests revenue from Norway's oil and gas resources and puts it into the government pension fund, right? So it's all of these things. It's using oil and gas to double, quadruple, and triple down with Bitcoin on the balance sheet. So what is this a sign of? Because we've seen a lot of different things here coming through this week. In fact, we saw some more whales now buying like we have never seen before. So there are all stacking. And as we know, a lot of these whales are some of these big giant corporations. I mean, we had Michael Saylor and MSTR literally announced that they were buying more Bitcoin yesterday. All right, granted, it wasn't a huge buy of just 155 Bitcoin, but that brings their total holding to, look at this, where is it? They have achieved, as of 23, or as of 8/10, they nearly have 630,000 Bitcoin on their balance sheet. And the unique thing of all of this is that MSTR has increased this holding by 60% since Donald Trump has been in office. Yes, I didn't stutter on that. You heard that correctly. 60% in the past 8 months that we've seen MSTR now increase that holdings. And it's not just MSTR, right? We have their STRD, their long duration high yield credit. But we saw Smarter Web Company, another one, buy more Bitcoin, 295, increasing their 10-year plan. We saw Metaplanet buy 518 more Bitcoin here. And all of this is just increasing these big giant holders who are helping collapse the volatility, which I think is very unique, because when the volatility of Bitcoin collapse, that's usually when we start to see some sort of historical flows come in. And on top of it all, this allows the bigger money to now want to invest in Bitcoin, because having these, let's call it low volatility moments, well, now the likes of, your JP Morgans, your whoever, they will now recommend Bitcoin to the average investor. They will now have their wealth managers be able to, let's call it, recommend Bitcoin purchases more so than they have been in the past. Because traditional finance, they don't like things with high volatility. Even if you just zoom out and go straight to the right, these big volatility aspects also scare some people. But if you're looking at the Bitcoin cycle model, it suggests Bitcoin is about to launch into a massive bull market. So we've got all of these guys, the largest pension and sovereign wealth fund in the world, the $1.7 trillion giant, now buying, doubling, tripling down on Bitcoin. So let's look at this. Let's look at the numbers here. At the end of 2024, they had nearly 4,000 Bitcoin, estimated at 400 million. Now they have just over 7,100 Bitcoin, and it expanded its position in Strategy, Marathon Digital, Block, Coinbase, Metaplanet. So it expanded all of those positions into some of these winners. And we're seeing, right, Norway, the UAE, and they have the ETF, direct exposure, the Kingdom of Bhutan, we'll get into them, El Salvador. So out of these sovereign wealth funds, we have Norway, the literally largest world pension fund. And then they have the UAE, the fourth largest pension fund, fourth or third, depending on the day, comparing it to China. So these giants are now doubling, tripling, quadrupling down on Bitcoin, and we're starting to see them expand. So you got to ask yourself, this was of last year. Are sovereign wealth funds starting to embrace crypto, right? Because these are the biggest guys globally. And the unique thing is that we have in the United States, we don't have a sovereign wealth fund just yet, but we do have maybe a peek into what this would look like, right? Because we have now Howard Lubnick, who is going to be in charge of the U.S. sovereign wealth fund when that comes to light. And he used to work at Cantor Fitzgerald. Now, if you guys recall, Cantor Fitzgerald, one of the largest holders in MSTR, literally half their portfolios MSTR. They even have IBIT, direct exposure to Bitcoin, NVIDIA, right? So they've got these. Rumble too also has Bitcoin on their balance sheet. So all of these guys, they have big exposure to Bitcoin, and Howard Lubnick's going to be close to follow behind. And, you know, just to refresh everybody's memory here, what did we have not too long ago? We had the strategic Bitcoin reserve and the digital asset stockpile. Now, of course, the United States has not started buying Bitcoin just yet, right? We got to hold off on that. They're not dumping money into Bitcoin just yet. We also, had Bo Hines step down over the weekend. I went over that on yesterday's stream. So there is some hairiness going on with the United States. Are they going to double, triple, quadruple down like we're seeing these other sovereign wealth funds across the globe? Look, time will tell on that. But what we are seeing, the facts, are that these other big players around the globe are starting to do it. And even the small dogs. We got El Salvador. Their reserves surging past 760 million, right? So they've been buying Bitcoin literally every single day. They started buying it with an average purchase price of $42,000. So El Salvador has already tripled their holdings here, and we are seeing the fruits of their labor, right? They started buying Bitcoin in 2021. Even though it had global backlash and everything else, well, we've seen El Salvador start to climb up there. And the unique thing is that I think a lot of these sovereign wealth funds are looking at the other things, right? They're looking at bond markets, right? Japan and China are major holders of the U.S. bond markets, bonds, U.S. holders of debt. We saw Japan sell off a lot of the U.S. debt fairly recently. And the first time we've actually seen the U.S. debt, let's call it foreigners selling off US debt, right? Because it's all upon this giant Ponzi scheme, so to speak. But the unique thing that we are seeing here is that, we're seeing banks say the quiet things out loud, which makes me believe that we are going to start to see some of these sovereign wealth funds start to really look at this, right? Because we have Strategy, the pioneer in using equity markets to fund Bitcoin treasuries, setting sights on the $300 trillion global bond market with STRK and STRF, right? We have that. And then we even have more with high yield credit, STRD. This article was written, before they even had the STRD down or stride. So Wells Fargo CEO is saying that the $300 trillion global bond market might be the most underappreciated Bitcoin story of 2025. And what did we see not too long ago from, Bitcoin's favorite adversary, let's call it, Jamie Dimon, where he said, and I quote, "It's going to happen. There's going to be a crack in the bond market." This guy, right? Everybody's favorite Bitcoin adversary saying the bond market is effed. It's screwed. We cannot go forward with a bond market like this. And Wells Fargo CEO is saying all of this, right? So we're seeing all of these big giant players start to bend the knee to Bitcoin. We've seen guys who have been in the Bitcoin market start to double and triple down and utilize a lot of these Bitcoin treasury companies to get exposure to Bitcoin. And so tapping into that global bond market where the MSTR flywheel, the famous MSTR flywheel that I will show you guys here in a second, utilizing debt to buy more and more Bitcoin, well, that's going to keep happening, right? They're going to issue debt to buy Bitcoin. Then when they issue debt to buy Bitcoin, their market cap increases because the Bitcoin price will increase. The Bitcoin price increases, well, the market cap increases and the weight in indices, like potentially the S&P 500, will increase. Then you go down the line, they're going to be able to issue more equity to buy more Bitcoin. Then the price increase, the market cap increase, and then now they can keep the flywheel going. Jamie Dimon and all of them are seeing this as well. And you're seeing the MSTR holdings held by JP Morgan skyrocket in flight and absolutely take off. So it's something where you are watching what they do, not what they say. So we're seeing MSTR and all of these big dogs essentially get double, triple down. All of these big players, the traditional financial system, they're starting to open their eyes to Bitcoin, at least these Bitcoin treasury companies. And what are these Bitcoin treasury companies doing? They are never selling your Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the most pristine collateral on the planet. If something crashes and burns on the Saturday, you can sell your Bitcoin. The only issue is you got to deal with the bank, which will be closed 24/7, 365. So you will have to now wait to get your money. This is why I partnered with Salt, because Salt is one of the most trusted partners in the Bitcoin space, where they are offering you to borrow against your Bitcoin. That pristine collateral that you guys have. You guys can go to saltlending.com/green candle. The link is down below. You'll never have to sell your Bitcoin. They are giving you guys an exclusive offer where they're going to give you guys better rates potentially than this 8.95%. The duration of 12 months, potentially better than that, potentially better of all this thing. You just got to go to saltlending.com/green candle, and they're going to give you guys an exclusive offer for the listeners here. You got to see, of course, it depends on how much you want to borrow, all the things you got to do. And on top of it, they have the Salt Lending Shield, where it's their no liquidation solution. So you guys don't have to worry about getting liquidated. You guys can just utilize this pristine collateral. You don't have to be sweating it out that you're borrowing against your Bitcoin, because we saw a lot of things blow up last year. You don't have to worry about any of that. Now, get your Lightning wallets ready because I'm going to give you guys some of this free Bitcoin every time you come to the Green Candle live streams. You just got to hit the subscribe button with the bell notification. Once you do that and you're in the chat, you will get free sats courtesy of my friends over at the Bitcoin Well. Now, if you sign up at bitcoinwell.com/greencandle and then hit buy Bitcoin, you will get 2 chances to win 1 million sats outside of just coming to the Bitcoin or to the Green Candle live streams. Boom, 333 sats. I hope you guys are feeling lucky. Get your threes up today. Make sure you're smoking that like Cheech and Chong, because we are seeing a revolution here, folks. But although we are seeing the revolution, that doesn't mean that there aren't some players that are making grave mistakes, right? We had Jamie Dimon start to bend the knee, start to buy up MSTR. But we've also had some players who have been, for some reason, very worried about the overall, let's call it macro environment, and just how will Bitcoin perform in those. So we've had the State of Wisconsin Pension Fund sell off their IBIT ETF before the trade wars earlier this year. They sold off literally their entire $321 million stake in there. TF is saying, Jamie Dimon has been buying Bitcoin via strategy in secret. I believe that. I would not doubt that one bit. And they increase. I mean, if you look at this chart here, you guys know and love, I love to show this chart of just how much he's been increasing this by. I mean, it's gone parabolic here. Almost as parabolic as we've seen the Norwegian pension fund increase its holdings has been Jamie Dimon increasing their holdings in just MSTR. So these guys, like I said, it's watch what they do, not what they said. The US might also be buying in Bitcoin. I think these are Bitcoin whales, not Luke's whales. We don't want these beach whales coming in on here. We got a lot of legends in the chat. We've also got some on X as well. We're watching the start of a global Bitcoin's arm race. Sovereign FOMO is here. They just pulled the trigger the moment the game changed for every central bank on earth. Exactly. I mean, we're starting to see it, right? These guys, it's massive here. I mean, the sovereign wealth funds, you can't understate this just because of how big these players are here, right? I mean, just look at this visualization. It's like a $1.7 trillion giant, and it's all for retirement funds as well. Like I said, the U.S. is trying to get one, but I mean, we also have, like I said, some bears here. UK looking to sell their $7 billion worth of Bitcoin. Kathleen is asking why the MSTR price action is seemingly suppressed. This is a great question. It's because MSTR is still in the phase of issuing more debt. So they're issuing more shares. They're diluting the stock to buy more Bitcoin. This is all a part of the plan of what MSTR, and the beauty of what MSTR does is they try to go and buy more and more Bitcoin. That's their mission. Their mission is not to make sure that price is going up right this second, because what they're seeing is all of these other guys start to come online, these Bitcoin treasury companies, right? So when they're issuing this debt and they see these treasury companies start to come up, they're trying to help get to, that full Satoshi for all these publicly traded companies. They see 16 publicly traded companies come in the last 30 days, 166 publicly traded companies coming online and buying Bitcoin. They're seeing these things and they're trying to buy and scoop up as much Bitcoin as possible. So MSTR, this flywheel that they have, right? They're going to keep issuing more debt. So even though the Bitcoin price is going up and, for all accounts, it's kind of stagnant right now for the amount that MSTR keeps buying, right? It hasn't absolutely shot up just yet. So when MSTR continues to buy, they're starting to load up, load up, load up. So they're not quite, to the point where the debt and the amount of shares that they're issuing are going to make the price action explode for MSTR just yet. But we're going to start to see these treasury companies start to come on because, hey, we've got, governments starting to buy. There's only 12 governments really buying Bitcoin at this point. And I wouldn't doubt it if we start to see, these guys really start to, increase their holdings here. Because the MSTR, the SQ, the Teslas, all of these guys, they're giving options for indirect exposure, right? So this indirect exposure comes from the UAE, comes from the largest sovereign wealth funds in the world. And they're going to keep coming along. And Norway runs the largest globally thanks to vast oil and gas production in the North Sea. So, although Norway isn't there yet and, isn't the most, I guess, prominent, but their large oil and gas holdings, you have to think that there is some sort of connection there when it comes to Bitcoin mining, all of that aspect, the way that they see the energy markets start to pile in. But if you look at Bitcoin from governments, right? We could see that, the United States is number one, but China number two, closely behind. The UK, these are the guys that are looking at number three, trying to sell off, right? And then Bhutan and El Salvador, and surprisingly Ukraine. Look, I'm not going to say what's going on there. We've even got, why do we have Roswell, New Mexico, starting to come on there? I believe that is the country of Georgia, not the state, but yeah, the country of Georgia has 66. Roswell, New Mexico with 23,000. Germany sold off all of their Bitcoin. I mean, who knows what they were doing there? Right? I mean, a lot of these players, a lot of the governments, the UAE is not on this list because they're doing it in their sovereign wealth fund. And they have been buying. They haven't disclosed how much. I mean, they're doing it through IBIT, Bitcoin ETF. So who knows? I mean, not who knows. Excuse me. They have been buying, but they have this exposure through the ETF. So those filings are all public, but it's just in dollar amount. Of course, we could say, you could potentially have paper Bitcoin, right? With these ETFs, it's not the real thing. MSTR will move up when Bitcoin moves up. Both are currently trading in range. Exactly. And for all accounts, TF, Norway isn't on here either, right? Because of what we were talking about earlier. Because they don't actually hold Bitcoin. But the true power of Bitcoin is holding it in self-custody. Now, this is why I've partnered with my friends over at Treasury. I mean, look how sleek this thing looks. We've got the Bitcoin only edition right here from this Safe 5. I mean, look at that. That orange is crisp. You could go to treasure.io. I recommend it. It's so easy. I set up my Bitcoin cold storage self-custody within 5 minutes. All I did was go to treasure.io. I bought this Bitcoin hardware wallet using promo code Green Candle for 5% off. Did all that. Then after that, I got, I bought this product. Go here. They've got some of the greatest and easiest hardware wallets. I got the new one because I like the sleekness. But you guys could do it for super cheap as well. I got the Treasure Safe 5, the Bitcoin only. You could go here, use promo code Green Candle. You plug it into your computer, this hardware wallet. You'll get it within 3 days. Then I got a compatible hardware to store my seed phrase. You don't want to store it on paper. I mean, we could get all this crazy paper around here, and who the hell knows what's on this piece of paper. But imagine holding, your entire wealth on this piece of paper, and then you freaking, you could just rip it, tear it up. My dog's over here sleeping. He could go and eat it. You go to cryptosteel.com. You can get one of these tiny things right here, the case. You could use promo code GREENCANDLE to save on that as well. And then with all of this, right, you're saving yourself some sats to protect and store your sats. They've got all the educational stuff. You could do multi-sig with CryptoSteel because it's super cheap. If you wanted to, you could just go shop, get some metal backups. You could do it for the cheapest amount. You could even do the hardware and do it all in one just on CryptoSteel if you'd like. But they've got some of the best security. And you could do all of these things, right, for $59, for as low as $30 if you want. You could set up the multi-sig, do that as quickly as possible. You cannot self-custody MSTR. That is 100% correct. I mean, look, you got Bitcoin sitting at $119,000, nearly $120,000. You're telling me you don't want to protect your wealth, generational wealth, in a backup? You want to have it on an exchange after what we just saw with Celsius, BlockFi, FTX, all of these things? I mean, we're seeing the whales accumulate Bitcoin at an all-time rate, folks. This is not slowing down, right? These pension funds, MSTR, look, they're even talking about Stride here, right? MSTR, they're looking at, hey, they're continuing to buy Bitcoin. Look at all these metrics, right? They're looking at, hey, this is their market cap in millions. This is the Bitcoin price. Here's their MNAV. It's still at 1.69, so they want to get that close to 1, right? They're not having that MNAV right where they want it because they want to borrow more Bitcoin to buy as much Bitcoin as possible. We're seeing them continue to stack up. I mean, the more I look at all this stuff, the more incredible it is, right? So it's actually, really, really crazy that you can hold this generational wealth. You could do it yourself. You could be in self-custody. I strongly encourage all of you guys to do that, as well as hitting that like Cheech and Chong, and hitting that subscribe button. I give you guys free sats every time you come. So make sure you guys keep coming into this Green Candle Live chat. I appreciate you all coming out on this early morning rip. And as the Norwegian pension funds and all these other big players are coming in, I'm going to be covering it all for you guys. So hope to see you guys at the next one because we're getting bullish out here, folks. So I'll catch you guys all at the next one.